So this is part two of the 66 Mustang front disc brake upgrade and brake job all around. So I've got it up on all fours here and just popping the drums off. There is definitely a leak back here. I'd looked at this previously and it looks like brake fluid, but doesn't look like the wheel cylinders are leaking. But I got new wheel cylinders for it and I got new axle seals, so we'll probably change everything anyways, but I'm interested to see once I pop the shoes off of here to see what's actually leaking. I think it's brake fluid, so we'll get a good look at that. Not really the focus of this though. Really the focus is detailed video on doing the front disc brake upgrade with the Wilwood brakes. In part one, we unpacked the parts that came from Wilwood. So this part two will be all the install of the front disc brakes, as well as the master cylinder and the power brake unit. All right, so a couple of notes here. I already took the passenger side apart. You need to keep your spindle nut and your retainer, and you'll want to get a new cotter key because it doesn't come with any of that. They tell you got to reuse it. I haven't opened it all up yet to see if it actually did come with it, but I'm assuming that it didn't because they say that it doesn't. So you got to make sure you maintain all this. The nut that's in here is 1 1/16, and I wanted to make sure I noted that because most people or most standard kits don't usually have 1 1/16, either a socket or an open end or whatever. I've got all different varieties of it, but most folks don't, or a lot of folks probably don't. So get yourself 1 1/16 because that's what you're going to need. It shouldn't be very tight, but it should be tighter than finger tight if the bearing was seated correctly. I actually repacked these when I bought the car not long after I bought it because they were not properly compressed. So I had to repack them and properly seat the bearings for the little bit that I drove it, which wasn't much, but I wanted to make sure it was right. So we're going to save the washer too. It's a special washer. Oh, you notice it's keyed. Spindle is keyed. All right, do that. This is not difficult. You know, I didn't really need to too much show the disassembly of this, but you know, I guess it's handy for folks who probably haven't done it before. Pop the front bearing out. This one, the shoe is looser on the other side, and I don't have a screwdriver right here to loosen it up, so I'm probably going to be an idiot here and battle this getting it off instead of doing the right thing and going to go get a screwdriver to back off the adjuster. But it's coming. All right. Oh yeah, this wheel cylinder is leaking bad, really bad. And a telltale sign of that too, not other than the fact that it's wet. And now I know why it was pulling. Now I know why it was pulling to the right, because the left side's filled with brake fluid. A telltale sign that you know it's brake fluid is because the paint will all be like this. Brake fluid eats paint. So that's a telltale sign if you're in the rear and you're trying to figure out whether it's gear oil or not, and it's soaked in it, you'll notice the paint is going to be like that. So I'm going to yank all this apart. Heed this advice if you think you don't have the right parts or you're not positive, you know, especially if you're intending to put this back together. Take pictures of this, because if you don't, you're not going to know what the spring configuration is. You're going to have to go online and figure it out. So take pictures of it. I took pictures of the rear. I'm not taking pictures of the front because I know that my Wilwood setup's going to work. And if it doesn't, I already know how these go back together. But take my advice. I don't even have drum brake tools. I hate drum brakes. I'm totally new school when it comes to that. I've worked on drum brakes a lot, but when I need drum brake tools, if I need a brake spoon or spring tool or the retaining tool, my dad's got all that crap. He's an old man. He's got old tools. I don't need it. If I want it, I go borrow it. Anyways, so I use my vice grips to pop these off. Let's take, yeah, I should be able to get that one off. It's just an easy way to do this, and I know I'm not reusing any of it. This is not the right way to do it, I will say that. And you can bust a knuckle real bad doing it this way too. But I'm an idiot, so instead of battling that one, I'm just going to release the retainer and we'll take it off that way. I'm not in the mood. Really not in the mood to fight these damn things today. All this crap's getting thrown out anyways. I'll probably give some of the hardware to somebody on the Digit 6 Mustang forum if they want it. Probably somebody wants it, but I don't. I don't need this crap laying around. So, if you don't have the retaining tool, by the way, which they actually do make a tool for this, I didn't mention it when I was taking the other one off, hold the pin from the back so it doesn't rotate. Put your pliers on it and just turn it 90 degrees. Of course, this one's going to fight me. And that's that. It all comes off in your hand. Yeah, this, I can watch the brake fluid drip out of this thing. So now I know why it wasn't braking for shit on this left front. Alright, take your pile of parts and just set them aside. Throw them out, whatever you're going to do with them. Now, the next thing that we're going to do, and I'm not even going to bother showing you this because it's super easy. With the Wilwood kit, we keep the stock spindles, stock ball joints, all that. It all stays the same. I'm quite simply going to check my ball joints to make sure that nothing's loose. This all feels tight. I do have new ball joints and everything for it, but I'm not going to replace them now, I don't think. I just got them because they were cheap, and, you know, that way I have them in case I ever need them. But you take the 4 nuts off the back here and just take the plates off, and that's all you have to do, and then the rest of it's just going to be cleaning. You might as well, while you're in here, scrape all the crap off of it, get it clean. You know, get all the grease off of here because you're going to repack the new bearings in the Wilwood kit, you know, so you're going to want to make sure you get all the old crap off of here, get all the dirt out, get yourself some brake clean, spray this down, make it neat. Go the extra mile. If you're feeling lazy, you know, just take a deep breath and say, you know what, I want to do it right and get it all set up. So, anyways, that's what I'm going to do next now that I've got the old brake drums and shoes off of here. Oh, and I'm going to take the wheel cylinders off. Actually, I think I'm just going to disconnect the lines because I'm putting new lines on it up where the hard line comes in. So I'm just going to take it all off as one piece. So anyways, we'll get that off and then we'll be back with the installation of the new Wilwood caliper mounts. That's going to be the first part that goes on, as well as the assembly of the hats and the rotors and the adapters. That'll kind of be a bench. That's going to be a bench segment. So we're going to continue on with the assembly of the Wilwood hubs. I think yesterday when I was talking about them, I think I had the nomenclature wrong. They call these the hubs, which that makes sense. They call that the hat, and of course the rotor. I already went ahead and installed the wheel studs. It was going to be too hard to try to even show that, and I mean it's pretty dumb safe, I guess you'd say. They want you to torque them to 77 foot-pounds, and it's funny because if you look at their photo, you know, they're clearly using an impact wrench, but I like specifications and using torques instead of just guessing at an impact wrench. You can over torque something real quick. This is aluminum. I think it's probably about a 7000 series aluminum, I'd say. It doesn't say anywhere on it, but it definitely has the feel of a harder aluminum. So I installed them. I clamped them in my bench vise and I used a rag on it. I just had to make it real tight and it didn't leave any marks, which was a good way to do this in order to get them torqued down to 77 foot-pounds. They also tell you, and here's something interesting by the way, a side note, the manual that they give you is very different from the It's very different from the instructions that you get if you watch the video of them assembling the exact same kit. Even the torques are different. I think they are. I have to go back and check my notes from the video, but I want to say the torque for these was different. Anyways, I'm just going to follow what's in the manual. It also has a little bit different order operations on the manual versus the video, but we'll just follow this. I don't think it really matters at the end of the day. But anyways, I went ahead and pre-installed these. The manual does not call for it, but the video does, and this is where I didn't follow the manual, because it can't hurt, is to use 271 red on the studs. It is removable, but it's higher strength. It's for larger diameter bolts. So I went ahead and put 271 on them when I torqued them down. The way that I did it, I brought them in a little ways because you don't want it on the threads over here. So I brought them in and left about a 1/4 inch out, and I put the thread locker on there, and I went and torqued them down. So that's the only part that you missed. Really nothing too complex here. All this hardware gets 271 on it, all of it. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and put the hats on. They are torques. I actually haven't pre-checked any of the sizes of this. I read the manual last night, and I know what to do now. There isn't any real great mystery to this. So I'm just going to kind of wing it as it goes together here. Obviously the hat goes on this direction because the rotor is going to be out over here. Remember, everything's getting spaced further away this way. That's why this is designed the way it is. It's getting spaced out so that way there's room for the caliper inside the wheel. That's what makes this kit special. The manual says to put the bearing in here. Now, the video, they did it afterwards. I guess I'm less and less following the manual, even though I just told you I was going to follow the manual. I guess I'm following the video more closely. Because this doesn't matter. You put the bearing in whenever you want. I would rather not get grease everywhere while I'm trying to put this together. I would rather put the greased bearing in there after everything's all assembled. So I'm going to do it that way. So anyways, this goes on like this. And they give you, everything's prepackaged, which is really kind of nice. I'm assuming these are just general parts that they've kind of used for all their stuff. That's probably why it's packaged as its own part number. If I was an engineering company like Wilwood, I would probably rely on a lot of engineering that I have already. That just makes sense. That's what I do. I'm an engineer, you know. We try and rely on stuff that we've done before. So the inner hat bolts, the 5 of them, they are in fact a T45. There are 5 of them. And I believe it says 45 foot-pounds for these in the manual. I am going to follow that. I want to say the video might have been 50 or 55, and that seemed kind of high. So we're going to go ahead and take these guys up to 45 foot-pounds, I believe it is. Just a triple check here. Yeah, 45 foot-pounds for these guys right here. So we'll take them up to 45. It'd be boring. You guys just get to watch me assemble something. You can fast forward this if you want. The next segment will be installing these on. Actually putting the caliper brackets on will be next. That's probably something more you want to see. But if somebody wanted to see the assembly of this, you can. Wilwood also has a real good video on this. But you know, we'll go ahead and do this here. Just shoot it all. Why not? Right? I love watching videos that are excessively long. Maybe you do too. That's okay. It's a beautiful day out today here in Southern California too, and I feel bad for some of you folks that are out there in the Midwest or out in New York. I know there's a real cold snap going on right now out there. A lot of guys I saw put their cars in storage. I have half a mind to jump in the Chevy and go out today. It's so nice. So anyways, we'll get all these in and torque down. And if you feel like watching it, watch it. If not, just go ahead and fast forward a minute or two. Also, this, you know, it's a little bit challenging to try and put this kind of torque. Of course, 45 foot-pounds isn't so bad, but you know, it's very difficult to do this when it's just sitting on a bench here like this. My camera's on a small tripod on the bench right now too, so I'm sure it's moving all over the place. Better than the freehand that I usually do though. Alright, so then we're going to torque these in alternating pattern. I set it for 45, but I'll snug them all first, and then I'll hit them with 45. You don't want to hit one in the corner with 45 right off the bat. It's just a little too much. So just like if you were tightening your wheels down on your car, just give them a little love first and go back and forth. All right, let's see if I can pull 45 on here without knocking the damn table over. There's one. See, this is just a huge pain in the ass. Now, this part of the video is going to be useless. So, these will get torqued to 45. I'm not going to shoot it right now because what's the point? You can't see it, and I got to put it on the ground to do it. Alright, so that was a big fail. I couldn't do it. 45 is just a little too much to pull with the amount of leverage that's right here. So what I did was I just threw it in the bench of ice, put a rag on it. Didn't tighten down on the lugs. I just used them for leverage. Didn't damage anything. So I just set it in there, and I was able to torque them down. So next comes the rotor. The rotor, I'm probably going to be able to torque it because it's 25 foot-pounds. We'll note that right now. And I'll have a lot more leverage with the rotor. So lower torque and more leverage, I should be able to do it. So we're going to go 25. It gets oriented this way so the vents are facing the backside. Right? Again, it's offset further to the inside of the vehicle. That's what gives us the clearance that we need. So that's they specify there. So we use the next set here. Hardware that they gave. So I'm just going to be real obvious. It's a different size hardware. It's the only set that's like it. So again, we're going to put 271 on it, and we're going to get all these in here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put all these in, and then we'll be right back after they're torqued up. And I also want to mention these are T40s, so that way you know what size torques you need. They are not Allens. If I didn't say that already, I think I mentioned the other one was a T45. I think is what it was. Yeah, T45. Yeah, this is a T40. So make sure you have yourself some sockets to do this, because these absolutely need to be torqued. I can tell you that just knowing what I know about this design. This is a highly engineered design. Just based on the materials it's made out of and the thickness of the material. This is not what I call brute force engineering, where somebody who's not really an engineer designed something, but they made it so heavy duty that it's never going to break. This is very elegantly designed, and with elegance comes it being fragile if you don't do it, if you don't install it or assemble it as prescribed. If you skip out, that's when you have failures. That's how good engineering works. So you got to make sure things are level. There can't be any debris in between. You got to make sure you get things torqued in the right sequence. So that's important with something that's elegantly designed like this. So I'll go ahead and get this torqued down, and I'll pack the bearings and install them. I don't think that you all need to see that, but you pack the rear bearings. If you don't know how to pack rear bearings or pack bearings in general without a bearing packer, go on YouTube. I'm not gonna show you. I'm sure there's 4 zillion videos on packing and installing bearings. And then of course the bearing goes in just like any of the hub setups, whether it's drum brakes or whatever. Every setup that's got bearings in it works this way. That's got taper bearings. The bearing goes in, seal goes in afterwards. So the seal essentially kind of holds the bearing in there in the meantime. So we'll go ahead and get that done, and then the next segment here we'll do the caliper install. So I've already completed one side, and I want to go over the installation, kind of in an overview before I show you the detailed install of the driver's side. Just a few notes. You'll see in the manual it talks about how many spacers you need in the caliper mount to center the caliper on the rotor. They recommend 2 to start with. I actually had to go down to 1 on each one, and that got it pretty centered. As far as the caliper mount to the spindle plate, they recommended 1 spacer, and that was correct. So 1 spacer for each bolt. This is the routing of the line. It goes between the A-arms and comes down and I had to kind of angle it up here because otherwise it would drag on top of the strut arm mount. So it's kind of angled up a little bit, kind of comes down and continues on up to the adapter for the brake line. Really not all that difficult. This was a pretty easy install. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump over to the other side and we'll do the detailed install. I wanted to do this one first to kind of get a feel for it. That way I'm not sitting there trying to fumble through it on video. You know, that's not helpful to somebody that's trying to figure out how to install this. So I've got a better idea of how it goes. I'm sure the other side will go a little bit smoother. Not that this didn't go smooth, it did. It went really well. I also test fitted the wheel on this side. It does barely hit the caliper without the spacer, but they give you the spacer. I put the spacer on there, plenty of clearance from the caliper. It's not a problem at all. The stock wheel will fit. My stock 14-inch wheels, no problem. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll jump over to the other side. Okay, so before we start the assembly on this side, I put this up on a tripod so you aren't having to deal with my shaky cam. I talked about cleanliness being really important. I've already cleaned the spindle. I know it's not very clean under here. A lot of that's due to the fact that I am going to come back in here. I've got a whole new bushing set coming for this. You'll notice the sway bar links are just shot. So I've got a whole energy suspension kit coming for it. I'm going to do that separate of this. I want to get the brakes done first. Very important because there'll be a lot of dirt on it on the back side here. Where those holes are, in the casting where it's been machined, you got to get all the dirt out of here. You have to get all the dirt out of there, and that's really important. You got to get that super clean with no debris in there because that is what is going to change how true the bracket is for the caliper. That's more important probably than the shimming is. Now, like I said, they recommended 1 shim back here, so it goes spacer, shim, mount. The bolts go that direction, nuts go on the back side, washers. We'll go over all that as I'm assembling it. If that's not clean and flat back there, if that's not true, you're going to be off, and then you're going to get a weird wear, and you'll get rubbing brakes, and you don't want any of that. So that's really important to make sure that that's good and clean. The reason they give you different shims for this to set this up is because there's differences in the castings, although this is machined, so it shouldn't be that different. They recommended 1, like I said. Let's wait for the awesome helicopter to go over there. Gotta love it. So it's machined. It should be pretty true, and like I said, the 1 spacer worked like they said, but they do give you extras if you need to offset it or anything. I'll show you. I actually use my dial indicator or my caliper, my dial caliper, to check the offset. It was off by 15 thousandths on the other side, which I didn't consider that enough to need to readjust it. I could have probably added 1 shim to it, but 15 thousandths is so minute, it's just not important. If it was off by 20 or 25, I'd probably start to get a little concerned, but and they don't give you a spec for it, by the way. They just tell you make sure it looks straight. So it's not like they tell you, it can be off by a 16th or anything like that. So we're going to go ahead and get the hardware, and we'll start lining this up. All right, so let's get this party started. This is the bracket. Make sure you can see that. This longer, larger angle goes on the downside because there is a left and a right. They're not the same. So this is on the bottom. The shorter one at a tighter angle is going to be on top. So it's going to go from this side to back side of the flange. Okay, we're going to start out with the hardware. This is probably the most complex part of this thing, just because, you know, it's, you know, you got to get, you know, stuff on here in order and everything like that. So anyways, so you get bolt gets a washer. There's two of them, right? Each one of these gets a washer. Face that out like that. Then you got two spacers. Spacer goes on next. Yes, there's really no great mystery here, I guess. You know, it's just, this part, you know, you want to make sure you get it aligned right. So these shims, I measured them. I think they're about 15 thousandths a piece. So they recommend one to start with. That's what I did on the other side, and I didn't have to change anything. It wasn't off far enough. I guess I could have added one because I think the other side was off by 15 thou, but it's just not enough. It's not enough for me to really be concerned. So it goes on like that. Like I said, this longer side goes down, and then you got washers, and then you've got clinch nuts. Some folks call them Boma locks for the company that makes them. They're, you know, they're a crimping nut, right? They're designed to not come off. These go on dry. Temporarily, we just cinch them down and check the alignment. So that means that the whole hub assembly's got to go on here to check the alignment. So we got to put it on, tension the bearing, get it set up, and if everything looks good, then these get torqued down to 30 foot-pounds. And there might be something going on with that nut. I'm going to have to check it because maybe I should try it on the other bolt. Sometimes stuff's just a little fussy. Yeah, this particular nut's got a little bit more clinch to it than it should. Make sure I don't lose my washers. All right. They are 12-point socket. They're 12-point nuts too. I'm sure they do that to save space. 7/16, even though they're, I think probably these look like they're 5/16 bolts. 7/16, 12-point. You know, it's another thing that you might not. Oh, you know, depending on how many tools you have, you might not have that in your kit. So it should just kind of go on smoothly. Oh, and this is, what is this, 3? No, this is going to be 5/16, yeah. 5/16 Allen. So we're just going to cinch these down. Probably got my arm right in the middle of the view for this, so you can't see nothing. Make my life easier here in just a second. I'm going to turn this. That's a tip for you. It's just being lazy and I didn't want to do it yet. We're going to rotate this. That way I can get the socket in here. Right, just snug it. Don't wail on it yet until we get them both aligned. Because these are going to kind of self-align. They're shoulder bolts. Or sorry, they're not shoulder bolts, but they're not threaded all the way. So when the bolt's all the way in here, it helps center it. Just want to snug it. Don't wail on it yet. All right. The mount is now installed to check fitment. We want to check alignment. I'm going to show you how I did it because Wilwood didn't tell me how to do it. They just said make sure it's aligned. What the hell does that mean? You know, in my world, I deal with engineering where specifications are really important, and how much run out do you have, things of that nature. I'm sure that Wilwood has a number for it, but they didn't include it, which is kind of annoying. All right, so that's all mocked up. Next thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna go fetch the hub assembly. It's got the bearings in it. Everything's packed. It's ready to go, and I'm gonna slip it on here, and then I'm gonna get my dial caliper, and I'll show you how that works. All right, let's get this hub on there. Bearing, I already put the bearing in here. Sometimes it's easier to put the outside bearing in afterwards. I didn't find that was the case here. It was easier just to do what Wilwood said and just put the bearing in there already. It stayed. Just be careful. Don't tear up the seal when you do this. I'm going to keep my thumb, as I ding the rotor, I'm going to keep my thumb on the bearing edge so it doesn't pop out on me in case I hit the edge of it with the spindle. Throw a little grease on that seal in there too. You don't want that dry on there. That's not good. All right, so we're just going to carefully slide this guy on here. Put the bearing in. There we go. Nice fit. It's kind of been the case with all this, by the way. It all fits really nicely, which I expected from a company like Wilwood. All right. Use our old hardware. I think I mentioned that before. Forgot to clean this up, so we'll just give it a little juice. Give it a little splooge. It's clean. Just don't want any debris on it. This hub is coming back off, but I want this stuff clean already. It's going to come back off because we've got to torque it still, but this is the fitment procedure that they prescribe, so brake clean. Alright, so we're going to do the initial seat, which this is something I think everybody fails to do with bearings. They either way over tighten them or they don't seat them before setting the tension. Everybody knows to set the tension, you kind of, it's a feel thing. I'm going to show you how I do it. I've never had a wheel bearing fail, so I must be doing something right, which is unusual. Inch and a 16th, if you'll remember, this is on these hubs, unlike the drums when I pulled them off. These hubs, you're going to need a socket. You're not going to be able to get your open end in there. You're going to have a hell of a time if you do, and you might screw up the threads for the hub, for the dust cap. So you want to do that. So I realize now you probably, I don't know if you can see it or not. Just check this here. Maybe we'll rotate this back a little bit. All right. When you seat these, and there's probably a million videos on it, but I'll go over it here since this is about installing this system. You're going to pretty much give it all you got. You want to crank down on it till it feels like it's getting real stiff. And I roll it a few times when I do it too. What that does is it kind of crushes the cages for the bearings into place. So they form to the cones of the races. You want that to happen because if you don't, as soon as you go and drive it, if you don't crush them down first and then back them off and set them, if you don't do it that way, then the bearings are just going to freaking get eaten up, first of all, and they're going to get real loose on you because they'll kind of naturally do that as it moves back and forth. So we're going to whale on this thing, right? Give it a little rotation, a little bit more. My 1/2-inch driver, that's enough to do it. So they're seated now. All right, now I'm going to back it off. Now I'm going to set the tension. Back it off again. This is a touchy feel kind of a thing, Yeah, that's about right. You don't want it to free spool. You don't want any play in it. You want a little bit of preload, and somebody's probably going to make a comment or say you're not doing it right, but that's how I've always done it, and it works real well. It needs to be, about like that. And that's a terrible spec, but that's, I'm sure that there's probably a preload torque that you know, it takes 10 inch-pounds of preload or something, but you know, they don't tell you. I'm sure there's an OEM spec for it because they say just use the OEM spec for this because it's OEM bearings. At least I think they are, because the spindle size is the same. At least the inside diameter of the bearings is the same. I don't know about the race sizes. I'm not sure if they're the same or not, but I'm sure that there is a spec for that. But the more important thing about that, don't over tighten them, and don't forget to crush them. If you don't crush them into place, forget it. They're never going to be right. So this feels about right to me. It's irrelevant though, because it's going to come apart and then I'm going to set them again. But you don't have to crush them again. But I do tend to seat them and back them off a couple times just to see how to get them to seat. I don't give it all I got a second time though. So we're going to take a look at the gap here. That actually looks really good. It looks about like the other side did. So take my dial caliper, or my Chino Master, whatever you want to call it, caliper here. And you might not be able to see it, but 0.5605, so 0.56. That's all the accuracy you ever need. So it's at 0.56. And the other side, if I can get it in here without too much trouble, 0.549. Let's see, 0.545. So it's about the same as the other side. It's off, and it's interesting because I think it's off the opposite amount, which might make sense because this is flipped over. Let me see. Just make sure I get this. Well, 0.55, so it's off by about 10 thousandths. That is more than acceptable. 0.5. It doesn't even need to be this precise. I'm sure some of it has to do with how true everything is. You're not going to get 10 thousandths worth of accuracy out of something like this. This is 0.55 now. So it's, something's moving somewhere, something's different. 0.553. That's close enough. It's not the best way to measure it. It's not the most accurate thing that I just did there, but it gives me an idea. If it was off by a 1/16 of an inch or even a 32nd of an inch, I would know it pretty easily. It's within 10 thou. That's more than sufficient. So it's too bad it's all set to go right now, but I got to yank this back off and torque it down to 30 foot-pounds. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now. Back the spindle nut back off. Get greasy again, because you know we love grease around here. Why not? All right. Nuts off. I tend to do these this way. I pull it just enough where I can snag the washer back out of here. I want to leave the bearing in there if I can. The other side I got lucky and it just really kind of came out in my hand. I got real lucky, but I guess not on this side. This side's gonna, grease is just holding on for dear life. Wait, might be coming. There. Isn't this exciting? Aren't you guys just probably clicked off already, you know? It's just, this guy's boring. All right. Again, be careful, don't tear up anything. Don't tear up your seal. Set the rotor off to the side. We're gonna call it. We're gonna say this guy is good. And I believe, we'll double check, right, because measure twice, cut once. I want to make sure, I think these caliper mount bolts are in fact 30 foot-pounds. They're 30, these are 40, but we'll double check anyways. Yep, calipers are in fact 40, and these are in fact 30, so I was right. But, you know, second guessing is just what I do. So we're going to go to 30 with this. My torque wrench is still there from last time. I'll leave this right where it is. There's 30. And not all that complicated. Could be intimidating for somebody that doesn't do this frequently. I used to work on vehicles for a living when I was first working. Actually, when I first started working, I was working on parking lot trams for a company. Anyways, it's not important. It's just anecdotal when I sound like an old man. All right, I'll put this back together. We're going to re-tension the bearing. Preload, I guess. Preload would be the right word for it. Be wrong if I didn't say anything else. Move you over a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit better. So like I said, I don't give it all I got again, but I kind of do tension it a little bit and I loosen it a little bit just to get a feel to make sure the bearings are seating like they're supposed to. Just a little bit of preload is all it takes. That seems correct to me right there. There. That's all it takes. That might be a little bit loose yet. There. I mean, I'm just moving it just a hair. All right. That's why this lock nut is so important. And let's see, I got a new cotter key for this, but I think it's on the other side. I knew I was going to forget something. Some folks fill up the dust cap and pack this thing full of grease. I don't really do that. Sometimes I do. I put a lot of grease in the bearing when I put it in there, so I'm not going to do that because it's not like a traditional cap where you smack it on there and it shoves a bunch of grease in there. It spins on, it's threaded. All right. Let's get this lock nut on there. That looks about right there. Missing a cotter key. Go get it. Drop our cotter key in there. It's a little bit of a tight fit with the way that they got this, by the way. It's just the way that they did it. It's the hub's a little bit proud of it and it wants to get caught. So I just pull it a little ways out so I can get the cotter key all the way down. Fold this guy over. Snip this guy off. Fold it in just a hair and puck up the threads because why not? Actually I didn't, but I did nick it a little bit. You got to be really careful about that. All right. That's looking good. Looking real good. Okay, well, the next thing that goes on is the dust cap. Put a little bit of grease, just a hair on that O-ring that's on these dust caps. I don't have that here either. I mean, I just snag a little bit of leftover grease if I've got it. Apparently I don't. Why is there never grease when you want it? Grease all over everything, and now there isn't grease on anything. There we go, I got a little bit. Just a little bit on the O-ring to lube it up. Kind of like doing your oil filter. You want to put a little bit on there. It keeps it, in this case, it keeps it from tearing up the O-ring. That's it. You know, that's the main assembly of that. The next thing is putting the caliper on. So like I said, on the other side, let's see if we can hook you in over here a little bit better. It gets shims, the caliper, the bolt, and then some shims in between. They tell you 2. I put 2, and it was too far offset. I went with 1 shim. I think they're 35 thousandths a piece, I want to say. Went with 1 and 1, and that was perfect. So let me go fetch that, and we'll be back to show you how to assemble that. And these will get Loctite 271 as well. Okay, so we've got some parts now. I think this is probably the best view for you. The caliper is going to get assembled. It's going to come on here like this. That's how this gets mounted up. Yep. I'm just making sure it needs spacers. It looked, I was at a weird angle there, and it kind of looked like it. Might not, but anyways, this will be good. This is get you adjusted here just a little bit. A little bit better view there. All right. So, bolts came in the kit. They each get a washer. Okay. And then they each get a spacer. The ones that came in the kit, I think, like I said, I believe these ones are 35 thousandths, I think is what it said. I'm trying to go off of memory. All right. Got them both there, and then this is a little bit tricky. And I already lost a spacer. All right, we'll get the top one in first. Sneak this one in here. They are half-inch hex head. At least I thought they were. Now how did that happen? Could have sworn that those were half. Maybe they're 9/16. I mean, I think they are 9/16. I just don't remember them being half. There you have it, folks. I'm losing my mind, which is not uncommon, but I don't even have that wrench over here. All right, well, better go get it. So yeah, I'm definitely losing my mind because the other side is 9/16. I must not have been paying attention, which is very common. Let's see, where's my... You know, I could have just looked at the socket that I used on the torque wrench. That would have been smart. Because that's the last time I used that torque wrench. Alright. Zip these down here. I'm going to check the alignment. This, I don't really have a good way of measuring this. They say just eyeball it, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm not too concerned about this particular offset too much, other than it should be relatively centered, because they're 4-piston calipers, so they're going to self-adjust anyways. It's more important that it's true than it is offset correctly, but you want it to, you don't want it to be too far off, because it'll make it hard to get the pads in, and it'll drag, and the pistons won't be in the optimum place. So these end up going up to 40, so I can give them a good snug with this in the meantime. Just check alignment. These do get Loctite, like I said, to get 271. So let's check that alignment. That looks to me like it's exactly like the other side. That looks almost perfectly aligned. Yep, that is definitely perfect. So we're going to take them out one by one, and we're going to put some 271 on them, and we're going to hit them with the torque wrench. And that'll kind of conclude this installation for this, other than I'll get the brake line and stuff in there. We'll show you how to do that too. But that does all the mechanical part of it. Really not too difficult, you know. It took me a lot longer to do the other side just because I was so particular about following their rules or their instructions, because they got about 7,000 disclaimers on their everything, Wilwood must be really risk averse, because they got disclaimers on every piece of cardboard. Every plastic bag has got a disclaimer on it. It says, don't do this unless you know what you're doing. Don't do this unless you're experienced. Make sure you follow the instructions to a T. Like, okay. Like, I get it. You don't want to get sued. CYA. Cover your ass. Isn't this fun? You guys get to listen to me rant. Alright. Get this guy in here. Get the spacer in there. Look at that. Perfect 36. Pull the top one out. Same thing. Make sure you don't lose your spacer. Don't forget about the spacer, because if you do, then it's not going to be aligned correctly. A little 271 on here. Not a ton. Don't put a gallon on there. It's not going to hurt anything. It just make a mess, you know. Of course, right in the dirt. Make sure you drop all of your parts when you're doing this. Alright, there we go. Okay, just double checking my spacers are backed in there. Yep. Something interesting I noticed on the other side, and I suspect the same thing will happen over here, is these torqued for a while, and I think it's because the nut certs that they used inside these plates, because they are a nut cert. I think they're seating. They say to go to 40 with them. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention too, that's in the manual. So read the manual. Don't just follow my video and do this. Read the manual, because I'm sure there's things I've forgotten, or I might have misread something. Make sure the bolts don't come through too far. They should just barely be protruding out of the plate. And they're nowhere near the rotor. I see like one, maybe 1.5 threads, so that's perfect. You can't have too much, because it'll hit. They tell you it's just got to barely be protruding. You also can't have too little. If it's not protruding at all, they say that's an automatic rejection as well, because you don't have enough thread engagement. All right, we'll go to 40 with these. And just like the other side, they are pulling. There we go. There's 40. And there's 40. And that's that. We'll go get the pads. We'll put them in. Pads slide in. I find it hilarious in their video. They must have had somebody do this, or they're just really neurotic. But in their video, and the guy kind of laughs, he goes, make sure you put the pads in there with the friction facing the rotor, and the guy kind of chuckles. So, anyways, that is how those go in there. And then it gets the cotter key, and we'll spread the cotter key. And that'll be that. All right. Okay, so go ahead and get the brake line installed next. I'll do the hard line side first, and then we'll scoot you around over here so you can see the caliper side. It's probably the only darn thing I don't like about these, and I think I mentioned this already. I don't like the 1/8" NPT that they use on their calipers. It just doesn't, I don't know. I don't like pipe fittings, especially for hydraulics. I am reusing the original lines. You know, they're in really good shape. They are not pitted at all. They have a minor surface rust on them, but they're in real good shape. So we're just going to stick with them. I am going to clean up the threads here a little bit on the nut, the flare nut. You want that to go in real easy. So it's just a little brake clean, which, by the way, is nothing more than acetone, really. Just in case anybody was wondering. Brake clean, though, the cans brake clean are actually cheaper than buying a gallon of acetone anymore. We want the flare to be clean, which it is currently not, I can see. We don't want anything, we want zero debris in there, because it ends up getting down into there, and we don't want that. Alright, and I had a little trouble with this on the other side. It's a little bit of a tight fit because these new fittings. These are really cool. I love these, and I have them on my truck too. You know, you can change the line out, and they're just a flare fitting with a flex line. So, anyways, but they're a little bit taller, and because they're a little bit taller, they're a little bit harder to fit with the original hard line in here. So I kind of had to finagle my way around this earlier to try and get it to fit. These are always fun too, these clamps. They just kind of, this stuff just kind of sucks. But once you get it in there, it's a good, nice tight fit, so. It's almost. Don't you love my misuse of tools? Whatever works, right? Because I'm too lazy to walk over to the other side and grab my hammer that I used on the other one. Alright. Nice and clean. We want to make sure we have zero debris in there. Maybe even use a little brake clean. We don't want to get acetone in the line if we can avoid it. So you don't want to shoot it up in there because that's not good. But I do want to get this, just make sure that any debris that got in the tip there is gone. Makes these go together just that much easier. Alright, then we're probably going to have to bend this line a little bit to get it. I can already tell. Of course, the grommet is toast on there, so I'll probably have to, I've got a grommet kit, I have to stick a new grommet in there. They're slit grommets though, so I can do it after the line's in. Alright, so bend this guy. Probably put a curve in it. I might have to go get my tubing bender. And we'll see here. No tubing bender required, except that I did it with the nut up at the top now, which sucks because, well, now I went and got myself in a real predicament. Of course, the other side went easy when I wasn't filming it. Yep. Too much bend. Add that this is not the right way to do this. This is me getting tired and frustrated, which means I should probably stop for the day. Bend the line back. That'll go. Now bend it over. Correct angle. All right. I use an open end to start them, but something that's very important with these, use a flare nut wrench, which I have right here. I'll show you in a second. It's just, you will round these out, and then you're going to have to cut it off and put a new nut on it, new tube nut, flare it. And you just don't want to do that. I use the open end because it's a little bit easier to get started that way, but as soon as it starts to get tight, that's it. Don't keep going. You flare nut wrench. Flare nut wrench is very important. And then on the bottom, on these new ones, they're 11/16. I think the old ones were 5/8 when I took them off. So we'll take our 11/16 box end here. We'll snug this guy up nice and tight. And these things, because they're steel, they'll take quite a bit. You know, you don't want to wrench on it too hard, but you want it to seal, so you don't want to be dealing with a leak. Make sure that the line isn't resting on the frame either. I'm going to be putting a new grommet on it, so I'm not going to... It's just barely touching, but I'm going to be putting a new grommet in here because this one's just wasted. And I'm going to be futzing with that line once I get under the hood. So that side of it's in over there. We're going to move around to the other side, and I'm going to put the 1/8" NPT fitting they give you that converts it to the flare for the hose, as I get dirt on it, which is not good. Cleanliness is important with hydraulics. They tell you to use Teflon tape. I don't normally like using it, but there are instances where you want to use Teflon tape. And the reason is in hydraulic systems, if you use a PTFE liquid or a sealant of some sort, that can actually get inside that can actually get in and it can contaminate the oil. We don't want to do that. They tell you to use Teflon tape. Teflon tape is a lubricant. It is not a sealant, but it kind of inherently helps seal. But it's really more there to lubricate the threads. So we'll go ahead and we'll put this in, and I'll show you the angle that it's got to be at, because originally I was going to try and do it kind of the way that you would expect to do it, where it would come up and over, but it's not long enough. It doesn't clear that way. It needs to come down in between the A-arms on the back side of the spindle, but you've got to angle it up like almost at a 45 to get the swoop to clear the lower A-arm and the strut arm that comes across to the lower A-arm. Let me scoot you around over here. All right, so it's sealed from the factory. They've got a little tab on here. Make sure you don't have any loose dirt that's going to fall in there. Okay, pull that guy off. I'm using what's left of the sticky just to kind of get the... That's not a sealing surface or anything, so it's not that important. I was just trying to get the sticky crap off of there. All right, you take your Teflon tape fitting that I already put on there. And by the way, when you wrap the Teflon tape, wrap it in the direction that it's going to be tightening. That way the Teflon tape wants to tighten on the threads as you tighten the fitting. Just be real careful. Don't cross-thread it, All right. And then take 7/16 open end. And you shouldn't have to, don't crank on it till you split the caliper open, because then you've damaged it and there's nothing you can do. You have to replace the caliper. It needs to be tight, but it doesn't need to be so ridiculously tight that, and this is why I don't like the fact they use pipe threads, because pipe threads just kind of suck. They're, they do need to be tight. They do leak. They're not a for sure thing. AN fittings or flare fittings, they don't leak. They just don't. So let's see. This is feeling like it probably wants to go around one more time. So we'll get it to go around one more time. See, look at that, I'm already rounding it. I don't like this. This is the only thing that they do that I don't like. So we want to get this guy around right about there. Okay. So about a 45, maybe a little less than that. Kind of heading off that direction because we want it to clear. We have all this space right here, so we want it to clear in that area. The hose does not have ends, specific ends is what I'm trying to say. Try and pick the way that it wants to naturally go. So, you know, it's bent this way, so we know we have to go up. Don't twist it. Just get it in there the way that it kind of wants to naturally sit. And then, you know, the rest of this is really, it's not rocket science at all, you know. So I kind of loosely put it there. I'm going to see how it wants to fit here. See if our angle is right or not. That's looking pretty darn good. But before I crank it down, because it's going to want to twist when I crank it down, I'm going to check the clearances here. So right now, slightly turned. I'm going to turn even more. Got it all the way hard. No interferences that direction. Hard on a hard left. Swinger right. About straight there. Don't see anything even remotely close. All the way hard right. Nothing. Make sure the rotor is clearing. It's not hitting anything. It's not hitting the lower A-arm because it does get pretty close to that. It's just the only thing it's hitting is the pads. All right, we're just going to snug it up. That's pretty much that. It's not a hard thing to do, but you do need to be cautious. It can't rub on anything. Don't twist it because it'll ruin the ends eventually. After turning 1,000 times, it'll ruin the ends. We don't want that. So I get my open end in here so I can see how it's going to want to twist just a little bit. You don't have to wail on these either. You know, they just need to be tight, not stupid tight. This one seems to want to have a tendency to twist a little bit. Can't see anything there though. It's going to twist a little. I mean, you just can't avoid it. You don't have to tighten this so hard that you need a wrench on the fitting. You're not going to snap the fitting off. It just needs to be that tight right there. All right. That completes the brakes on the lower end here. Yeah, this came out really nice. I'll get the wheel spacer. I'm not going to put the wheels on it yet because we have to bleed it. When we do go to bleed it, Wilwood tells you only use the upper ones. They said you'll let air into the system on the bottom. That makes sense to me. Probably wouldn't have done that anyways, but I read that. And they specifically said only bleed it from the top. So that looks good. So this part was pretty easy. The harder part's going to be doing the master, digging in the under the dash. That's going to be real fun. That's going to be a third part of this video. I think I'm going to cut this one here. I know there's a lot of folks interested in this brake kit and if it's any good and if it fits their stock wheels. So I want to get this posted up this weekend. Tomorrow, like I said, I'll be doing the brake master and that whole job. You got to take the brake pedal out and drill it for the clevises in a different location for power brakes. So I've got to do all that, and then I've got to do the rear end, which I'm probably not going to show any of that. Everybody's changed wheel cylinders before. There's other videos of it. The important thing that I wanted to show here was the Wilwood setup because I don't think anybody's done a in-garage video like what I'm doing right now. I think there's the Wilwood install of this particular setup, but there isn't somebody kind of going through the whole the whole process, not just an abridged version. So hopefully this is helpful. As usual, it's for your viewing displeasure. If you like what you saw, go ahead and subscribe. Maybe someday that'll help me out. You know, I don't make any money doing this. This is just a hobby. I don't really want to make money doing it. But having subscribers eventually can help pay for things. So, you know, if you want, I'm not telling you you have to. Go ahead and like and subscribe. All right. So we'll see you in part 3.